Senator Cory Booker is the latest Democratic candidate to suspend his bid for the White House. The New Jersey senator made the announcement just moments ago. He was one of only two African-American candidates still in the race. CBS and political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns is joining us on the telephone, and CBS News 2020 campaign reporter Jack Turman is in Des Moines, Iowa. So, Caitlin, to you first. Why is Senator Booker choosing this moment to drop out?
Hi there, and apologies for some background noise. I'm on my way to Iowa as we speak, actually. But the Booker campaign news comes as he did not make the debate stage for the debate tomorrow night. And in his note to supporters, he said that, he ran as a uniter and a healer, but we've reached the point, he says in the memo, where we need more money to scale up and to continue building a campaign that can win. Money that is harder to raise, having been blocked from the next debate, and with the urgent business of impeachment rightly keeping me in Washington. So that's kind of the reason the campaign is giving for the senator from New Jersey. First, that it's really difficult to have the momentum heading into Iowa in these next couple of weeks if you're not on that debate stage, if you don't have ways to really connect with people and raise more money, and kind of knowing that the next few weeks are going to be taken up by impeachment, which is going to have the senator off the campaign trail in Iowa and back in Washington at a really critical time.
Well, I got to tell you, I feel like Cory Booker was probably one of the most sort of positive sounding and enthusiastic candidates, even as he wasn't polling sort of in the top four. He always sort of seemed very optimistic. So, Jack, you've been with the campaign. Can we talk about some of his signature issues that, he was a real sort of mouthpiece for?
Yeah, that's right. He really pushed and was a leading voice on gun violence, safety and gun violence prevention in the race. In May, he released his gun violence prevention plan, and it was basically a gun licensing plan. And his argument was, if you need a license to drive a car, you need to have a license to own a gun. And another issue that he really touted on the campaign trail was criminal justice reform. He noted that in a very hyper-polarized, partisan time in Washington, that he was a leading force on the First Step Act in the Senate and in Congress, which President Trump did sign into law. So he really led the field, especially on those two issues on the trail.
So, Caitlin, for supporters of Senator Booker, is there another candidate in this race that best mirrors his priorities and might be able to pick up some new voters here?
Who benefits?
Right. Well, given that the senator really didn't have a huge base of support, we saw that in polling, it's kind of difficult to tell where these supporters will go. But I'll note a couple of things. First, whoever Senator Booker endorses will be, that would be a really key endorsement because he is a real active force on the campaign trail when we've seen him campaign for other candidates. It's also significant that, this is a 2020 field that is becoming significantly less diverse. When you look at the debate stage tomorrow night, it is all white candidates on that stage, and the top tier contenders of this race are all white. And now with Cory Booker exiting the race, there is no African-American candidate in the running at this point. Jack mentioned a lot of the issues that he talked about as well, and you can expect that to continue. And Cory Booker, it's interesting to think about some of these candidates who have gone after Joe Biden. I'm kind of thinking about Julian Castro, who dropped out recently. You had Kamala Harris. Cory Booker was very critical of Biden earlier in the campaign and then kind of backed off of it. But it just goes to show that those kinds of criticisms of Biden, who is considered still the front runner for the nomination at this point, really kind of backfired. This is a time where we're seeing the candidates become more aggressive with one another. We're seeing Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren go after each other a little bit in the final stretch before Iowa. And Cory Booker is someone who really campaigned as someone who wanted to be, campaigned on this message of love and unity. And it's not clear if that's something that is resonating with a Democratic electorate that really just wants to take on Donald Trump.
So, Jack, I do want to ask you about that because, you know, here you have Cory Booker. He seemed to have a pretty strong social media game. I know that Elizabeth Warren always brags about her selfies, but, man, I think Cory Booker could almost rival her, could compete. He was really good with the selfies. A great speaker, a lot of enthusiasm. There was definitely a call for the Democratic candidates to reflect the Democratic voters, more diversity. So here we have a diverse candidate who's proven himself, certainly in Newark and now, you know, in the Senate. What happened? Why wasn't his message enough for Democratic voters?
Well, that's right. That's the big question that a lot of, I guess, pundits would argue is like, why hasn't Cory Booker's campaign really taken off yet? He has consistently polled in the single digits throughout the election cycle. His fundraising numbers have lagged behind some of his other competitors. And that's something, too, that I would note as well in terms of fundraising. He, right before the third quarter ended, his campaign manager sent out a memo detailing that we need to hit this fundraising goal in 10 days in order to keep the pathway to victory possible. He hit that goal. But Senator Booker has been very clear from that time forward that he's not in this presidential race as a vanity project. He's been very clear that he's in it to win it. And if he doesn't see the pathway forward, he will drop out of the race. And that's something he noted in an email to supporters just now, that he does not see that pathway to victory right now at this moment.
So, Caitlin, you know, in addition to running for president, of course, Cory Booker is a New Jersey senator. But I wonder, you know, it's sort of striking to me that, as Anne-Marie pointed out, there was an attempt to mirror the diversity that exists in the Democratic Party by the DNC. And so I wonder what the path was, how the path was illuminated for candidates like Cory Booker, like Julian Castro, like Kamala Harris. What was the impetus for them saying, you know what, there is a path to the presidency for me, because we talk a lot about diversity. We talk a lot about having representation, much in the same way that Democratic voters looks like. But at the end of the day, it's not really working out that way. And, you know, we're now looking at a group of candidates running that looks unlike what we saw in the early stages of the campaign.
Yeah, that's right. After the 2018 midterms, you really saw this fuel behind women candidates and African-American candidates and black candidates, because we saw that black voters in 2018 were really fueling the base of the Democratic Party. We saw the turnout in the midterms, and there was a lot of thought that that could be reflected in the presidential race as well. But when you look at the polling, and again, polling is all that we have right now at this point, because voters have not weighed in. They will just in a couple of weeks. But we're seeing that candidates like Joe Biden are getting support among the more diverse group of Democratic voters at this point. So there is this question about representation versus this kind of what electability or perceived electability looks like among Democratic voters. In other words, we're seeing that African-American voters, Latino voters are not necessarily supporting black and Latino candidates. Instead, we're seeing candidates like Joe Biden getting those supporters. So this is something that candidates like Julian Castro and Cory Booker have been really vocal about, kind of having this conversation. So when we talk about kind of the next steps for Booker at this point, too, and he will be running for re-election to the Senate as well, this is certainly part of the conversation that Democrats are having right now.
So moving forward, he's still going to be pretty busy, as you point out. He's a senator, which means there's lots of stuff happening, a vote on the president's war powers, and, of course, a potential impeachment trial coming up. What role do you see him playing sort of publicly for the Democratic Party, both as an outspoken senator, but also as we move into the campaign season?
Oh,
Sorry,
I'm
Caitlin.
sorry. Well, certainly lots of candidates would want Cory Booker to come and campaign for them and endorse them. He is a very powerful force in the campaign trail. I remember being in Iowa around this time last year before Cory Booker had announced, talking to people there who had seen him come and campaign for other candidates who really liked his energy, liked what he had to say. So you can certainly imagine him being a powerful surrogate for whoever becomes the nominee. And also, he has to run for re-election, so that will be another thing that he will be contending with in the immediate term. But I'd also like to point out, we've been talking about the impact that the impeachment trial will have on some of these members of Congress who will have to balance these roles on the campaign trail and their chief priority, which is the Senate. Cory Booker, Amy Klobuchar, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders. There have been lots of questions about what this will do to the campaign. And so it was interesting to see in that memo the Cory Booker campaign said that it certainly was a factor, that the idea of being away from the campaign trail and not being able to have that interaction, not being able to use that to kind of raise money, could be a distraction. So I'm interested to see if we hear more from candidates as we get closer to Iowa, the impact that the impeachment trial is having.
Right. Okay. Caitlin, Jack, thank you so much, guys.